Everything we know, from people and ants to stars and galaxies to quarks and atoms, the entire universe, might just be a simulation running inside a supercomputer inside an even bigger universe. Ancient philosophers said that the universe is a dream that we're waiting to wake up from. In this dream world of the imagination, anything is possible. All cultural items, from the dreams of our rodent-like ancestors, to books, to television shows, are merely permutations of the reality we think we live in. Today's age of computers and video games places simulations at the center of our cultural consciousness. A select group of us perform simulations for fun and profit, and we call them games, role-playing and otherwise. We live to run simulations. Join us on the Simulationist Podcast as we explore our culture of simulations.
Hello once again, welcome to the Simulationist Podcast. We are recording this on the 4th of the month of May of
Happy
year
Star Wars Day!
2014. Happy Star Wars Day, everybody.
May the 4th be with you.
Yes. Of course, you are listening to this after, but anyways, that's fine.
You'll be listening to some other, Star Wars Day, just going back in, retrospective styles of the Simulationist on, Star Wars Day, or Star Wars Week, I suppose is what we may have to wind up doing for that, just as we mention it every year.
Yes, indeed, and this is our 87th iteration of the podcast.
It's also the day after Free Comic Books Day, being the first Saturday in May.
Yes, yesterday was Free Comic Book Day, and I picked up my allotted assortment of comics that they let me pick up.
I woke up early. I went down there with my wife. She got some. I got some. And I also paid money for a comic that was not free.
Oh, that's good, because that's sort of the purpose. Theoretically, that's the purpose of Free Comic Book Day, is to promote going down and actually spending money.
Well, there's a comic every once in a while I like to pick up, see what's going on there. But I gotta say, I've been pretty impressed this year by some of the free stuff I got. Not hugely impressed, like, oh my god, this is something I'm going to have to definitely make notice of, but it's like, this has potential. I'll Google it later on, see what they might have for trade paperbacks, and maybe pick it up that way if things go nicely.
Okay. Did you have any, highlights in mind, maybe, of the stuff you saw?
I found the comic Epic to be very interesting. The origin and singular focus that they had there. Kid winds up getting, doused with, mutagenic stuff and winds up becoming a superhero. Mm-hmm. Spoiler alert, turns out his powers turn off whenever he gets a little horny. So yeah, he's flying by what's effectively a Victoria's Secrets ad, lady just in her underwear sort of thing, and all of a sudden, no longer flying, he's kind of fallen now.
Okay. Is that this one with the dinosaur on the front?
Yes. Well, it's not a dinosaur purely. I mean, it's like a T-Kong sort of thing.
Oh, sweet.
Call it. It's part dinosaur, part a giant ape. And that's the thing is, it seems to be that everything focuses around genetic manipulation sort of thing and chemicals. One of the guys they mention, in the comic, if you look at the first page when they're doing a villain splash panel, he is known as Roid Rage. He's green and super angry and just like a bruiser type thing. And so It seems that they're maintaining a very tight focus, not unlike what they did with the Dakota series with Static, that's now, I guess, part of the DC universe proper, where they made sure everything tied in as one unified story, as opposed to sometimes Superman, he's an alien from another world. In this encounter, he will be fighting a warlock. Magic exists right now.
Yeah.
And so that gets a little weird to have everything in as the melting pot style. This seemed very pure and focused, and I quite liked that. The storytelling was done nice, in media res startup. The artwork was quite good, especially for something free, because I'm like, what, you going to complain about the artwork? You've got your money's worth, buddy, come on.
No, I hate when people say that, because I really want the free comic books to sort of represent for their titles, in that they're intended to get people to like it and want more. So I really think the art should be top quality, and it is. I mean, I
believe myself to be slightly spoiled. When I was young, I was able to read a lot of the Silver Age Superman stories. They'd republish them in small, Archie-sized kind of comics. I kind of wish they do that now. Not a big trade paperback thing, but just a nice little, here's some collected stories of your superhero. Mm-hmm. And they would always draw Superman the same way, and so he had a very distinctive facial style, which I guess, is something that goes by the way, because every artist has their own little interpretation of it. The Superman in the Silver Age looked like this. You always drew him like this, and it was very definitive. It was almost, I suppose like what they do with the Archie now. Archie has one specific look. Don't deviate from this style. That apparently after 30 years kind of gets a little old, so they have to experiment with new styles. Mm-hmm. But I liked that, and so seeing Superman look different for me is an inconsistent artistic quality. So I have to accept that, yes, people will change their art styles, and maybe what I've grown accustomed to, the traditional Silver Age style, isn't for everyone, or even for every story they're telling.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I have to get used to that fact myself, because, as I said, I've been spoiled.
And I suppose that's one thing that you need as a comic book reader, like sort of if you're being a consumer and a connoisseur of comic books, that's one of the first things you got to learn is to take the art for what it is. And
that being said, it is kind of nice to see how the artist draws different faces. Like some artists are accused of only doing one face and then just switching hairstyles up or putting glasses on a person, and that's how they change it. Whereas a person who was going to draw Superman or Pete Parker sort of thing for the Silver Age stuff, Peter Parker had a very definitive look. You would know. You could just have a head cut out like that, and you'd say, oh, that's Peter Parker right there. I know that. That's Superman. I can tell from the chin and how the facial structure goes. And so by having the artist make sure he's drawing the face to look like someone, like this person actually exists, right. I think that's a rather nice touch, as opposed to saying, oh, yeah, he's a skinny kind of kid with brown hair, and he's got big round glasses. Bam. And, oh, that's Harry Potter. But no. If you're going to make it look like Daniel Radcliffe sort of thing right now, it's going to look like it's from that base. And so there's something to be said about that, I suppose.
Okay. Yeah,
there's good arguments either way, and this argument was brought to you by Free Comic Book Day, which makes you think about comics. Well, it worked.
And I remembered, I think I picked up a SpongeBob comic.
Oh, yes, my wife got that one from my daughter, but I haven't read it, although my daughter was flipping through the pages back and forth and kind of starting to shred them.
I guess the SpongeBob has some leeway because it is drawn in a number of different styles throughout the book. Like, there is the standard SpongeBob style, but they do this in the cartoon, too. They
change how he looks depending on the one scene. Like, they'll do a close-up and his eyes all of a sudden are all kind of grody with gunk on the outside rim. And
yeah, exactly. They do, like, different levels of detail. They sort of zoom in, zoom out.
I'll call that a Johnny K style, because you really saw that come to the forelight with John What's-His-Face and the Ren and Stimpy cartoons.
Oh, yes.
And they zoom in on their eyes, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's disgusting. Zoom back out, zoom back out. Oh, okay, there we go. Kind of cute Ren and Stimpy again. Oh, okay.
But, I was saying, you can get away with it with SpongeBob because he's a yellow square. And whereas, like, your superheroes are human-shaped, so it's harder to do iconic shapes.
Superman should look like this person. SpongeBob, he's very much more on the cartoony end with, like the rubber hose arm, school of drawing. So, yeah, he's got a different style, different leeway.
Yeah.
But it is nice to look at and see the difference between the whole thing. Well, that's the thing, is they gave out 4 comics this year, it was, for every person?
I think it depended on which store you went to, but I went to the 2 on Johnson Street in Victoria.
Oh, there was the second one, I know Curious Comics was doing it, what's it,
Yellow Jacket.
Oh, okay, Yellow Jacket didn't look like it was doing anything when I went by. I missed out, darn it. But yeah, you can take your 4 comics if you want with different styles. It's just nice to, once you're done your reading and enjoying it, take a look at different art styles, have them all open, and see how they do things differently. And if you are the kind of person to study that, you will gain great insight, I'm willing to bet. So there you go.
Cool.
But yes, in other news, what have you been doing this week, Josh?
What have I been up to? Oh, well, I was going to use Free Comic Book Day as my big event for the week. Cause
it was pretty big.
That was exciting. I've been playing Minecraft. I've been, what did I do in Minecraft? More village craft, I guess, which I guess you and I are sort of... Yeah, we're taking similar tacks
Well, I wanted to see this one aspect of the game, and I've been following it to all sorts of fun conclusions and testing out some other new things. I'm looking at some tutorials online and learning things that way.
Okay. So yeah, my villagers, I finally got tired of, the town of Reedville. I think I've mentioned this before in my ramblings about my adventures in Minecraft before. But I exhausted my librarians. Like, they had good trades, and I was trading, getting a lot of emeralds for paper, which is the best, most efficient for them.
It is pretty nice.
But eventually they unlocked their gold trade at the end, and gold was too expensive for me to trade with them. So my recent adventures have been building a railroad, and then putting them in carts and shipping them off to another place to start a new village. And then that way the remaining villagers will have babies, and some of them are librarians. So
that is a much better option than what I had been considering this week.
I'm sure you've probably been killing your guys.
No, actually, not a single one died from any of my machinations this last week.
Oh, okay.
Which is not to say they haven't been almost trying to commit suicide on their own accord, but that's an issue with the AI.
Yeah.
But I was thinking that it seems that they're willing to go to certain areas where you could block them off and then just let them meet their own end, we'll say.
Yeah.
And then that way you can just trade through and focus on, I just want to get a whole bunch of wheat, and then just trade that with the farmers. And I don't have to worry about encountering this farmer who says, no more wheat, I've got enough. He's no longer part of the picture. Wink, wink. And so I'll just find a new farmer willing to trade the wheat, and I don't have to worry about, running out of my trades.
Okay, yeah.
It's a little brutal, though, I will admit.
I don't think I'm not being especially efficient with my trading. I don't lock the villagers in houses. At least
until they're safe, right?
The town of Reedville is very built up, and I've got jack-o'-lanterns surrounding it in 100 block radius. So there's no zombies getting in there.
I don't know, I enjoy having to come up every once in a while, I'm doing something down in the basement area, and all of a sudden I hear, "Rawr, bang, bang, bang." I'm like, who is this dang person knocking on the door at this hour? And I climb up out, and I see them, and I smack them around. Okay, I'm done with this, I go back down.
Yeah.
I'm some sort of weird, crazy dwarf that lives in the sewers. I pop up every once in a while, beat the crud out of a zombie, and then go right back down again.
But, with me it's okay, so I'm going to go in the village, and I'm going to go find a villager and, talk to him, say, okay, he wants raw chicken. So now I have to go get, so much raw chicken and gather it up, and I try and get a lot. And then when I go back, I'm the village has grown so big now, and I don't do a nice grid pattern like you do. I do kind of random buildings, and they're around corners, and I do, basements, so that I have to check in all the cellars to find... So, yeah, it's... kind of a pain finding him again, because he might be on the roof somewhere, because I built some stairs up to roofs, and but it makes it interesting. So
at least you're having a fun little adventure out of the whole thing. Me, I've got so many people slamming doors. I sometimes just have to leave the area just for some peace and quiet.
Yeah. And my town is also a place where I have a beacon set up with a speed effect, so I can run around the town extra quick.
Can the NPCs take advantage of the speed as well?
I've been trying to figure that out. I can't really tell. I've been trying to watch them and see, but it's very hard. I don't think they do, but...
Oh, thank goodness.
They do. It's funny how quick they... if you watch them, they move rather quickly.
Oh, yeah, especially when they're running around from...
Yeah.
There's, the previous week with mine, they'd be falling off the one side of the area I was digging to get the proper bottom in my basement done. And they'd wind up falling off the side, and then they would run. If they could run this fast from a zombie, I'd never have to worry about it. But no, they seem to just, oh, there's a zombie. I guess I'll just kind of move out at half of their speed and just kind of wander around, humming. Yeah. But no, when they need to get to the top of that little staircase so they can get back to where they want to for the night, in the home sort of AI mentality, they just, oh my goodness, the speed. I actually wouldn't mind seeing an enemy that has that sort of running speed, some sort of creepy cheetah man sort of thing going on. It's oh yeah. They don't encounter very frequently, but if you see one, it's going to be right at you. So I hope you were prepared, as soon as you saw it. Make for a nice, different style monster, I suppose. But that's just me, but the concept of seeing them, if they had a speed boost on there, oh my goodness. I mean, I'd never be able to hear the end of it for the doors. I mean, the sounds I've got down in the basement, I've got my house underneath the stairs right now, none of the sounds of anything I do opening a chest fully completes, because there's so many sounds of doors and humming, it has to cut off. There's too many sounds going on.
Yeah.
The ding whenever I wind up, like, oh, hey, I've done, smelting, this cobblestone into regular stone again. There's no other half of it. It's just too many sounds going on. It's crazy.
Cool. Yeah, let's see what if I think that's about all I've been sort of up to in the gaming world. Yes. I don't know. What have you been up to? Stuff.
I've been reading a lot of Ravenloft material.
Okay.
I had a thought occur to me last week as I was watching, I think it was The House of Frankenstein. It's like, I've seen a lot of these old classic, Universal horror movies. I am much better attuned with what I think they were trying to get with Ravenloft. And it's like, I haven't thought about Ravenloft for a while. And I gotta say, reading it again, it's almost like, in The Lord of the Rings, when Gandalf dies and comes back and he says, "Oh, I lived, like each day was the life age of the universe, and then I came back," and they're like, Gandalf. He's like, oh, "Yes, Gandalf is what they called me," and so he's remembering all the stuff he had forgotten because he had been away for so long, despite the short time it seems, right?
Yeah.
For me, reading Ravenloft was a lot like that. It's like, oh yes, I remember this domain here. Yes, who's the ruler? Ah, yes, it is Baron Evensong, and every night he spends in his library, it's 100 years for him. And yes, I remember over here. What was going on there? It's all coming back to me now. Huh. But I also remember why I left it behind.
Yeah.
3rd edition was not kind to it. The mechanics were okay, but White Wolf's Art House bought the rights for use in 3rd edition, but they didn't do much with it. They had it as a very static setting.
Right.
2nd edition things happened. Like, here's the adventure for Ravenloft, and it's just its own domain. And then other domains start coming in next to it as it expands out. And then conjunction is trying to happen, so it might undo all of Ravenloft, but things go wrong. And then the map changes. All of a sudden, 2 domains just drop off the side, and a sea opens up on the east coast, and things move around. And, and goodness to the people who live in this horrible little world, they accept it so very well. The people in Nova Vasa wake up and they, we're a port town now. Start building ships, guys. And they do. And it's like, geez, we lost a neighboring nation here. There is there's like no nation there. There's no land there. It is a pit. There's some clouds down there, some fog or something. I'm not going down there, but I just thought you guys should know we're missing a neighbor. And everyone seems to go, okay. I suppose that means we change our trade routes around and work our way. Okay, we'll see how many of these other domains are missing and all that, and we'll just work our way around so we can get horses from here and sell our trade goods over that way.
Okay.
So very resilient folk for some weird little world. But 3rd edition, nothing. No years progressed. No big plot bits happening.
Right.
It just stagnated, which, they did some really nice stuff. Like, they did a bit they had the Van Richten guides, too, werewolves and vampires and ghosts that did some really wonderful changing things, stuff you were able to really concrete amongst all the worlds in 3rd edition. It's like ghosts have these powers, alternative powers, and age-based stuff, and, the ancient dead for mummies and how things work, greater mummies, lesser mummies, things that you just didn't have in 2nd edition. So Ravenloft was very much a pioneer of what would become some interesting mechanics in 3rd edition.
And this was all done by White Wolf?
Well, no, this was done back with TSR and a lot of their fans. In 2nd edition, 3rd edition, they were able to update it and have some good rules for that. So if you want to have a really, really ancient vampire that's more powerful than a regular vampire, there's rules for that and how it progresses and added challenge rating.
Like Dragon Magazine, you mean?
No, in this case, for the 3rd edition stuff, when they were updating it all, they had their own, splat book for that.
Okay, by White Wolf. Then.
Yeah, by White Wolf. In 2nd edition, it was a splat book from TSR, the Van Richten Guide to the Ancient Undead, or to the, the Werebeasts.
Yeah.
In 3rd edition, they did some wonderful things with hags that you just don't see. Most people know hags as just a monster in D&D. How did this hag come to be? It was born a hag. They were always a hag. Versus mythology in the real world where a person can become a hag. Like, oh, I was an ordinary person, and then I turned to evil ways, and I'm a magic-using female, so I became a wizened hag. Mm-hmm. So they had some nice rules on that, but they never exemplified it by saying, and here's a nice little domain with a tragic back history for an evil person, and they are a hag, and this is how it all works. No, they just presented the rules, and they didn't change any of the geography. No added domains, no nothing. And it seemed very... Well, Ravenloft is never right, but it seemed wrong in the wrong way, if you can get my drift.
Not sure, but okay.
Well, Ravenloft was something that moved and evolved and pulsated like a weird tumor blob sort of thing.
And that's the way we liked it.
It had its own style. It's gothic horror, and things would change and things would happen, and so you felt like... things are going on and what's happening now, and the Grand Conjunction I mentioned briefly earlier was actually a series of 6 module adventures. And so you could play your characters through that, and they could be a part of what is going on here. 3rd edition, there was nothing of that. It was, here's the world as of, 751 on the Barovian calendar. Have fun doing it your own.
Well, I think also the transition between 2nd and 3rd edition was also the transition between TSR and Wizards. And if I remember correctly, I think what happened at that time is they looked at sort of the numbers of a lot of their product lines and realized that many of them weren't actually making money.
Profitable, yeah.
So I would have thought Ravenloft would be one of the more popular ones.
Well, that's the thing is towards the end of the 2nd edition, they had fans, the Cargantine, they were producing their own stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And it was considered canon. And so, it's like the fans were really driving stuff, and that's what helped keep it alive and vibrant. But they weren't allowed to do any official changes in 3rd edition because White Wolf's owning it now, and they gotta, they own the rights, not you, and you have no actual permission to do that. And so anything they made was just fan-based stuff. And they did some really good things in 2nd edition. Like one of the domains that got dropped out of the core was a place called Blutsfer, which was basically, nothing much going on up at the top, but underneath there was Illithids, lots and lots of Illithids, and an elder, not just the elder brain pool, the elder, god pool sort of thing, like 1,000, Illithid brains all combined together into something truly massive and horrible and evil, even beyond what Illithids usually do, and that's why it has its own domain. And so, what they did in the 2nd edition, when, the Conjunction kind of popped it out, was they said, okay, how about presenting it instead of its own puck domain, it's now an ethereal domain, and whenever you have psionics, and psionic-using people doing too much stuff in there, it homes in on them and will wind up taking them. So, eventually, your psionic person who's controlling minds here and there, doing stuff to catch the attention and using too much psionic points, you opened up the door to where he was living, and all of a sudden you saw him screaming into the darkness in the corner as something pulls him in, and he was never seen again. Something that very much really helped encapsulate the Lovecraftian feel of the Illithid that you don't always see.
Right.
And so they did some great stuff with that, but in 3rd edition, Art House got the rights to using Ravenloft, but they didn't get the rights to the Illithids. So Blutsfer was covered just as, this is a horrible domain with lightning storms every night over there. There is no known intelligent life. Whatever life exists here must be truly alien and horrible indeed. But they couldn't mention anything about what was really there, or what was really going on, or any of the history there, because they didn't have the rights to publish what the heck was there.
Okay.
And so
that's too bad, because, at the very least they could have pointed you to a Wizards supplement, being like, hey, Wizards of the Coast wrote this other book about Illithids that would fit perfectly in right here.
That's the thing. What got me was the more I was looking about this, the more it occurred to me, is like, you know what? Ravenloft would have done so much better as part of the open gaming license. Now, okay,
I think every setting could benefit from that.
Well, here's the thing: is Blutsfer couldn't have wound up being involved because Illithids actually aren't part of it. Okay. But what you could do with the Islands of Terror sort of thing is have any company that produces their own setting, like the Kingdoms of Kalamar, or what's the Pathfinder title again for their world?
Well, there's the Inner Sea.
Do they have a name for their
Golarion?
Yeah, the Golarion area. What they could have done is said, okay, let's have some open source stuff for everyone to see. What's the feel of the Golarion thing with a gothic twist to it. So we'll take this bit here and this bit here and that bit there, and we'll combine to create a nice little group of islands connected. And that's basically what we have here, and that shows some of the unique characteristics of our campaign style.
Well, hang on.
So Ravenloft filtered.
Ravenloft. Well, I don't know if that would work for Golarion, because Golarion is intended as, and I think a lot of campaign worlds are this way too, as like a patchwork of like, so instead of like, oh, there's this plane, that plane, that plane, it's like, no, there's this country which is like this, there's this country which is like this, and it's sort of like the patchwork is on the surface of the planet rather than being out, in the cosmos, which is another, that's fine too.
Well, that's the thing is, we could work it for like the Eberron stuff. They had that horrible stuff where we accidentally wound up releasing a magical nuke, and now everything is horrible here. They could just take that bit there and say, oh, we're going to put that to some of the people involved in that who were responsible for it. They didn't die from it. Shunt it to Ravenloft. So if you want to see what things are kind of like for an Eberron sort of action-packed, fighting style, here's a nice little area that will highlight that well for you, with a nice dark twist and gothic sort of feel to it as well, just for fun.
Okay.
And so, stuff like Ravenloft and even, I suppose, Planescape were very much an open game sort of style back in 2nd edition that just never wound up getting transitioned under what would have been a great open gaming license to make reference and use to.
Yeah, and Golarion, I can't remember the names of all the, I'm not that deep into the setting, but I do know that they have certain, they have a country, like this is the Dracula country, or this is our version of Transylvania where sort of vampires roam and werewolves. And so I would imagine that possibly what you could do is you could say, oh, well, there's a connection between that land and sort of its Ravenloft province.
There was a very notorious character here that wound up, getting staked one day. He didn't really get staked. He just got transported to Ravenloft, and the Mist put up with a fake, skeleton with the stake through it, and that's, why everyone thinks they're dead. Like that's what they did back in 2nd edition with one of the Dragon Kings in the Dark Sun campaign setting. Tried to become a dragon, and one of his main Templar wound up, trying to booster it and hasten the process. Didn't have the proper facilities to even think about what she was doing was right or wrong. Or he. There's actually some debate about the gender relations on that. But things went wrong. The entire town got wiped out and destroyed. It is now ruins. It's the ruins of this area here. But what really happened was the people and everything in there got transported to Ravenloft. Ravenloft, the Mist made an exact replica of the domain sort of thing going on there. So everyone on the Dark Sun believes it to be destroyed in a horrible magical cataclysm. Turns out, no, it's just a person doing something really evil and then got shunted down. Because that's how the Mists operate. And so it works out very well, like evil bad person used to be here, now it's just ruins after they got their comeuppance. Whoop! Really happened, shunted to Ravenloft. So that way you can have the story for the background, and then for those who want to see it through a proper filter and like, oh, I want to try an open game sort of style, see what the feel of this campaign is like, try it with a Ravenloft twist.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Well, I should ask you this because maybe you have insight into this. But what is the difference? Like, you can have a very dark themed adventure set in Greyhawk, Golarion, Forgotten Realms, Eberron. You can do that whole vampire-y thing. You can get very dark.
Yes.
And that's quite possible. You could even do a very dark, historical Earth campaign.
They actually did. They had a Gothic Earth in 2nd edition.
And
I got a coffee. It's still in the wrapper. It's mint.
You can use all the monsters and all the trappings.
Except orcs. There are no orcs in Ravenloft. Don't know why. But
well, you can take them out of Ravenloft or sort of and use them in almost any other setting and make it basically fit. So why is there, why do you think, what reason do you think that there is for a setting that's specifically these are domains, this is a unified place of darkness that's bring all the domains together and sort of everything is dark.
Everything has its own style to it. When you look at something like the Dragonlance stuff, it's very knights, like knights in tournaments, and and chivalric honor, and fighting against the dark evils that are evil because evil is evil and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has that sort of feel. Greyhawk has more of a more traditional style. Less, if there's anyone that's the least amount of dungeon punk, it's going to be the Greyhawk style. It's very classical, pseudo-medieval, I suppose is the best term for it.
Mm-hmm.
They may have wondrous machines, but there's nothing approximating a tank there.
Okay.
Eberron has got a very much like an Indiana Jones sort of adventure action style going to it. And so each one has its own flavor, sort of thing. I suppose in this case, you could make an argument saying that, yes, the Greyhawk thing is a traditional lemonade. It's good. It's not bad, sort of thing. Everyone likes lemonade, just not all the time.
Okay.
Whereas, we can go with, say, the Forgotten Realms is kind of, I don't want to use the term swamp water, but it has a nice mix of everything. It's got all sorts of stuff in there, so it has a nice omnitaste for it. Sort of thing. So it's like combining 2 or 3 drinks together, and your types of, like lemonade and whatnot drink together. And yeah, it's not bad. You like it.
Yeah. Right.
Eberron, I'll say, is kind of like a berry punch because it's really sweet, right to the senses, right there. Yeah. Super sugary that way. Yeah, I dig that.
Okay.
Whereas Ravenloft would be
be adding booze to any one of them.
Not quite booze, but it would very much have
poison.
A sour lime twist to the whole thing.
Wormwood.
Something like that. It's just something bitters. If you get like pure bitters and put that in there, it really make you pucker. Like you might pucker a little bit after having a bit of traditional lemonade, but if you have it with a Ravenloft thing, wow, that really got you right there. Wow, there go my lips, man. That's just turning in there. Okay. And so each one has its own flavor, and sometimes that's what you want to go. Sometimes you want to tell a story with a particular theme and motif. Ravenloft, the bad guys are more powerful than you, likely by a significant margin. But don't feel bad that you can't defeat them, because there's things controlling them, and as bad as they make your life, their life is tortured even worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's even the great mystery as to what the heck are the myths anyways. Is it, are they good because they imprison evil and torture them? Are they evil because they help foster evil and they wind up actually giving rewards out to those who do evil things? Eventually you get your own domain if you are just that bad a monster.
Hmm.
And so you get to inflict your kind of torture that you so want upon, like whatever it is, for your particular theme and vein of a style. But you're never going to get what you really, really want, sort of thing. And so, that's why I keep using the term gothic horror sort of thing. Evil is powerful, but it never gets what it truly wants, and its comeuppance will occur. And so that's a nice thing to tell every once in a while. Whereas stuff like Eberron and Forgotten Realms, you can win the day by swinging your sword and just dealing enough points of damage to overcome the enemy. That's not going to work in Ravenloft. If you are going to win the day in Ravenloft, it starts with the right information, good investigation, properly applied, heck of a lot of luck. I'm talking a boatload or more. You need 2 boatloads of luck preferentially, and then a really good moral compass. Like, you have to almost engineer your wins. You cannot just do it because, I rolled enough 20s to slice the monster up. No, that's not going to win the day in Ravenloft.
Okay.
And that's, I think, kind of nice as a twist, especially for some DMs that kind of get upset with their players eventually. Just, I'll just become more powerful than the enemy and trash their place. I'll go to Castle Ravenloft and I'll just loot the place, man. I'm level 20. What is he going to do? No, Strahd will mess you up.
I believe that, and I think there's a place for that sort of exemplar in the pantheon of D&D. At the same time, I feel like a DM worth his salt ought to be able to create something like that out of any setting or any adventure. Just tweak it so that it's not necessarily all force of arms that will win you the day.
No, but Ravenloft is almost like a Rube Goldberg puzzle. Like, I'll take the domain of Avonlea. There is a house, a mansion, really. In it, there is a person who is not dead. He's in a crystal coffin and has preserved him at the verge of death. There is a rather large and powerful sword struck straight into his abdomen. Spoiler alert, I suppose, if you ever wind up in that sort of campaign. The sword is a demon forced into that sort of thing. However, should the person he is in wind up, dying, he is free to roam the world once more, completely free and unfettered. The crystal coffin that maintains this poor victim's, non-death has to be recharged every year. The coffin was created by the ghost of an evil wizard who was convinced that if this demon gets free, the one person he truly loved, the one thing that actually makes him somewhat human rather than a monster, his one love will likely be the first target of this demon for corruption, death, insanity, and whatever else the demon feels like doing. He's a demon. He has fun with it. And so they managed to get the horrible, evil monster of a wizard, and his ghost, to do this one good thing that's kept it into a stasis. It's not a win, because in Ravenloft, a win is rather hard to come by, but at least they forced it to a draw. And so if you're going to do something to stop it, you're going to have to figure out a way to let this person die, because he's kind of, in the eternal limbo of non-death. Find a way to keep the demon from being unfettered and freed. In addition to potentially dealing with a mad monster of a very powerful wizard who doesn't really want anything to do with you. He just wants to be with his one beloved. He kind of keeps captured in, his own place.
Now, doesn't D&D, like vanilla D&D, has like binding and soul jar, or a spell that will circle of binding or protection against evil that should be able to,
might be
accomplish
able to.
that,
Ravenloft things very much take a case-by-case scenario. Okay. This demon is powerful and evil enough that he is able to somehow circumvent some of the laws of Ravenloft. Demons with their, I am so evil, it's an integral part of my physical being, don't mesh well with Ravenloft energies. It causes reality wrinkles, as they call it. And so he's done a lot of nasty things in addition to that. And so it could just be that his evil trumps whatever mortal magic you're using. If you're even powerful enough to use these mortal magics. Good luck with that, buddy. It's more of a low magic sort of campaign, too.
Yes.
It very much heightens the horror that way if you can't just say, circle of protection, healing, and cures. Yeah, I'm covered, don't worry. It very much... the low magic of it really heightens the horror in a lot of situations.
So, what does that really mean for Ravenloft? Like if you roll up a wizard character and you're playing in Ravenloft.
There's a lot of spells that wind the risk of running dark powers checks as you corrupt yourself.
Oh, so there's a mechanic for that.
Partially, yeah. There's a thing about magic is not very common in a lot of areas, and there's a lot of superstitions about it. Using magic can cause what they call Calibans to occur, which is kind of like magical mutations, and instead of having half-orcs, they have mutated people. They call Calibans, just monstrous-looking, freaks, each one different.
Okay.
More different than the last.
So I see that as an old school method, which has its pros of that whole thing. Well, you're allowed to play a wizard, but it's going to be. You
have to be very careful about what you do. Reading people's minds in a place full of evil people is not necessarily a good idea. Forcing transformations on people, I don't like you and you are in my way. I turn you into a toad. That's very traumatic for the person and could be considered a very malevolent act. And doing such a thing, especially making something potentially permanent on a person, could be very well conceived as an evil-styled act, as you're really twisting the mind of what a mortal person should be able to know and not know. Now, they know too much about the animal world because they've been an animal. I mean, you could even use that as being the domain power of a dark, lord. You could say a savannah type situation where you've got there's muskets and hunting stuff there, so you can have I'm the English hunter sort of thing. I'm out on my hunting savannah sort of thing. But if you cross his path, he will turn you into one of the animals he prefers to hunt, as you then have to, as a pure basic animal, try and escape the guns as he hunts you down on his own domain of savannah, which I think is a very nice, very dark thing for it. And I mean, you could see why this guy is evil enough to warrant his own island of evil.
Yeah, well, I like that as a storyline. I'm finding it, like, I'm trying to imagine it as an adventure, because Ravenloft is supposedly a setting for campaigns to take place.
Yeah, you could be like someone wandering through the mist trying to get to a location, and in this case, it's your stop. You go through the mist. Oh, it's not where you want it to be. Now, I don't look like the knolls I keep seeing on the horizon, but there is an encampment over there. It looks to be some sort of fort. We'll go there, and so you go to the fort, and it's like one of those like hunting lodges that they've got well protected against the knolls out in the wild and all that. And the head honcho, the main person on this hunting lodge encampment sort of thing, he winds up being the domain lord. And if you cross his path, and you all because he likes to hunt, and if you somehow interfere with it or try and get in his way, he will you to become an animal for his hunt.
Yeah, and then what happens? Then the adventure becomes trying to escape as an animal?
Trying to escape as an animal without your powers, without your opposable thumbs, without your weapons, sort of thing. If you can make it to the end of the border, and get away, maybe we'll say you turn back into a human sort of thing, but you have to be able to make it out, and then you have to avoid both the hunting party, and I'll say the wild gnolls out there, because it's a savannah, so I picture a nice little monstrous sort of thing, gnolls.
All right.
It could be something else going on, tribal people, whatever. Have some fun. You're getting hunted on two sides. If you manage to make it out, congratulations, you go back to humanoid form. Otherwise, you get hunted by the hunter prime. He shoots you, skins you, and then your tusks and your pelt winds up adorning a royal noble's area somewhere in the core. They don't know you're actually a person, but that's the end of your fate. Nice job, hero. Welcome to Ravenloft. It's one of the many perils that await you as you journey throughout the world there.
All right, yeah. Well, I like the thought, too, that could become a little bit of flavor, I suppose, like in another adventure. It's like, oh, there's a strangely intelligent-looking tiger.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. There's the domain of just down in the southwest. Begins with a V. The name escapes me right now. But the domain lord for that started life as a panther, got polymorphed into a human, forgot his animal ways, because that's the rules for polymorph. Got set up with a nice lady, and he's having a wonderful romantic time with her, wooing her and dancing, and then, one thing leads to another. Turns out she is the enemy of the wizard who transformed him into a human, and then, dismiss magic, and all of a sudden, the person he was in a romantic embrace with, oh no, he's an animal, claws the out of her, she's dead, and then, the guy's basically using him as a sleeper assassin. And he winds up, in the end, he winds up becoming like some sort of were-panther, vampire, weird combination thing due to how things work out. And he's in his own twisted lifestyle because he can never truly love someone. He will always turn into like the were-panther and claw the piss out of him. But he never stops requesting a bride once a year because he wants to try and find true love. That's his torment. He will never truly be able to understand his nature without accepting the fact that maybe he can't have true love, at least until he gets over, some big, deep issues he's got.
Okay, well, I'm liking all these stories that I'm hearing, although, a common theme seems to be that they end in, death and destruction, so I don't know how well they work as a game, but, I mean, they're definitely good stories.
Well, for that one, you could wind up being that... your adventures are, you're working with a trading guy who's going in there, and, as the trading guy's doing his trading, but you're with him as part of, the bodyguard, because there's some dangerous stuff out there. You don't just travel the roads, with no protection. I mean, at the very least, brigands will get you, and that's the very least of your worries in most domains. And so, you get approached by someone who says, I need some work, sort of thing done, and turns out his daughter was the one to be elected for the annual bride, but no bride survives the year. In fact, she goes to Castle Pantara, which is actually the name. Really a kick-ass name for a castle. Castle Pantara!
Yeah.
Throw up the horns! But no bride survives the year and is never really seen once she goes up there. And so he says, you got to take her and you got to run. You got to get her out of this country. Go to Richemont. Take her somewhere else. Take her anywhere outside of the evil, Duke's Duke or Count, I forget which, the evil nobility's reach. Take her somewhere she can be safe from him. And so that would be your thing, is you have to wind up escaping from the forces of both the royal, aspect, because he is the nobility, he is the law, as well as his supernatural forces. And so you're fighting like, werewolves, well, not werewolls, but, were-panthers and all that coming at you. And so it then becomes like, here's the story, here's how you are included. You don't even have to face him, just face the things that come, he can send after you.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
That's not a bad one, and that way your good deed is getting her to somewhere to safety. Not true safety, everywhere's kind of dangerous in Ravenloft, but at least she's out of the hands of the person who would have definitively killed her, within, likely the span of a couple of nights. So, hooray! Take your victory where you can get them. Welcome to Ravenloft.
Yeah, so that's Ravenloft.
So yeah, I had a lot of fun going with that, and I'm really hoping 4th edition they'll revive it and breathe some more fresh air into there, even if it's the fresh air coming out of an open mausoleum. At least
we can hope. And a thing I will always say about the campaigns is that fans are always doing cool stuff, and you can always, of course, in your own sort of campaign world, you can always do your own thing.
Well, the thing is, I could spend the time and I could write up the Island of Terror that we described on the Savannah Lands.
Yeah.
And that would be a wonderful little thing. I could do it, but it would never be officially canon. Whereas if I was to have written that back in the day, back in like 1998, pull back the clock there. Back when 2nd edition was around, it could have become a canon thing and would be floating out in the mists as something that is definitively there for the entire world to enjoy. It's canon. And that would have been sweet, I suppose. But I came up with the idea just recently, and it's a little hard to go back so many years in time, apparently.
Well, you can still submit articles to...
And that's what I would love, if they were to take something like Ravenloft in 4th edition and say, okay, we're going to let the fans help decide this. We're going to accept contributions. It's going to be very much a living sort of campaign style. And we'll elect, annual winners here and there, and we'll have it published up officially, and you wind up getting paid 3 cents a word for your contributions that we take. So they pay a little bit of money, but they get some of the best quality. They get to pick and choose the best quality of anyone willing to submit on that. And hey, the setting lives. It grows. It changes with time. And that, I think, would be grand. Just something truly good for 4th edition to show how much they care.
It's a little late for 4th edition.
Or, sorry, 5th edition in this case, D&D next. I mentally erased the actual 4th edition from my mind. It's my quirk, I'm sorry. But, for D&D next, they can say, you know what? It wasn't making us a lot of money in 2nd edition. And 3rd edition, they couldn't do too much with it. And 4th edition, we just kind of ignored it except for a few supplement stuff. So what we're going to do in 5th edition is have it as a living campaign. We pay for this, and then you guys can wind up getting, the PDF downloads for $5.99, and it shows, what's going on here and there. And it will grow and it'll evolve, and every 2 years of real life time, we'll make sure the campaign moves 1 year ahead. And that would be very nice, I think.
It would be fun, yeah.
It would show that they care, that they're willing to invest at least minimal time and effort into things, and let the fans help control things, and it will grow as they want. So that core base of fans will be allowed to coalesce and grow more than just putting out a splat book that doesn't age.
Sure.
So, yeah. So that's what I've learned this week in my travails through fiction.
All right. Well, yeah, reading stories of Ravenloft.
Well, that's the thing is, I was just reading the splat books in 2nd and 3rd edition. I've got some novels I picked up at a second-hand store I should probably get around to that I really have a keen interest in getting into now that I've wetted my whistle on it again.
I see. Cool.
It's not something I think everyone should spend all their time with, but it's nice to take an occasional trip to Ravenloft, provided you know how to get out, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I suppose that segues us into an interesting topic we have for this week, is when to have a villain and when not to have a villain.
Okay, well that didn't seg us at all.
Well, Ravenloft is defined by its villains. There is a big bad for you to get away from in every area you go. It is inherent. If there is no big bad, if you wind up offering the big bad and there's nobody even baseline malevolently evil, the entire domain will just kind of dissolve back into the mist, and everyone gets transported here, there, elsewhere.
Okay, so we're segueing.
So from that into when you do and do not need a villain. I was watching this week the classic movie It Came from Outer Space, which is one of the classics of the drive-in movie era.
Yeah.
And there was no villain. There were aliens that were horrifying and did some creepy little things. They took hostages, but that was only so people don't come guns a firing and killing them. They needed to get some repairs done on their crash spaceship, and so they needed to have some protection against these crazy people that would fire projectiles into them.
I don't know. Well, okay, I guess I'll take your premise in that they weren't really evil, but oftentimes that's how movies are set up anyway. Of course the villains aren't really evil. They're just doing their thing, and it's a clash of interest.
Personalities and interests, yes. You could say maybe perhaps that the town sheriff was being evil when he rounds up a posse and gets ready to go and start shooting in the mines where the aliens are coming out from, because their ship crashed and got buried on the top. They fortunately had some mines under the Nevada area desert for them to get out.
Yeah, well, it's just like sort of on a surface level, sort of Hollywood does set up this, like, the humans, the white hats are the good guys, and pretty much they can do sort of shady things as long as it's only killing aliens or robots or something, or bad guys. And the bad guys are the black hats, the ugly, the creepy, disgusting aliens who are forced to take drastic action. And Hollywood sort of says, well, those are the bad guys, those are the good guys, so we have a good, bad. But yes, you can of course always make an argument that no side is truly at fault, or that maybe the good guys...
The aliens just wanted to get their interplanetary technology off Earth, because Earth was not ready to go to other planets. Like, they were ready to try and blast a hole to the core to prevent humanity from getting this technology, because they were not ready.
Okay, yeah.
And so, the aliens were ready to take some pretty drastic actions just to I guess, keep the rest of all of space from getting contaminated by an unready species.
Yeah, so they took the drastic measures.
And but they weren't evil. What they ultimately wanted was just some time to get some materials that they needed to fix their spacecraft and then leave. So they weren't really evil, and I found myself a little disappointed in that, because maybe I've been spoiled when watching alien movies. It's like, oh yes, Predator, that's an evil alien. The Xenomorph, that's an evil alien. E.T. wasn't an evil alien sort of thing. I guess the FBI in that case wound up being the bad guy. But I'm used to there being a definitive, good or bad side in there.
Well, except that, the reason that you don't sort of empathize with the Predator or the alien or certain sides is that you aren't given access to their sort of internal lives. Like, I'd imagine that from the Predator's point of view, he's doing something that's pretty fun. And pretty
honorable. From what I've been told on their stuff, is what they do is like a rite of passage and helps mark their point in society.
It's just like, imagine a human hunter. I think that's the intended analogy, is that humans are carnivores also, and we hunt creatures.
The weird, creepy, super powerful ways we hunt the animals is what the predator alien is like to us.
Yeah, I think that's the whole sort of message behind, and ultimately it's sort of an environmental, modern ethics sort of message, in that, well, maybe we should think before we sort of take control over.
When you're hunting animals and you're using your stealth camouflage and your bullets and all this stuff that can strike out from like a quarter mile.
Yeah, but yeah, I can see I'm sorry to sort of deconstruct your whole good guy, bad guy thing, but...
Well, so that's the other thing, though, is because I was thinking back with the Ravenloft tone, and let's face it, there are some people out there that very much have a Ravenloft style to them. Tim Burton, for instance. And I was thinking through his stuff, because a lot of his stuff you could almost say has, a bit of a Ravenloft feel to them, and I was just thinking, well, which ones would actually have, be like a domain in Ravenloft? And I'm thinking through, and I'm like, I remember that Corpse Bride movie, I liked that one. But it didn't need that marrying villain guy that they had in there. They could have had it just be a personality of conflicts, and people wanting, things, and there's only so many grooms to go around, apparently.
Right.
And you didn't need a bad guy in that one, and I would have been perfectly happy without there being a villainous bad guy in that.
Although I think the main difference between a story that's a story of conflicts of interest, or, different people fighting for different things.
Limited resources in this case, husbands.
Yeah, it's like two sides, neither of which is necessarily wrong. The difference between that story and the story of the hero fighting an unassailable evil is simply that you don't, the audience is not allowed into the inner sanctum of the evil guy. Or
in the novels,
not as much.
They do some very nice work at showing like the evil person as the protagonist.
Yeah, and I think novels you have more time to do that also, but also
you only got about 2 hours for a movie. I will say that.
Yeah, so I think it applies in a similar ratios. You get more time spent with the hero, the person that the author wants you to think of as the hero, the protagonist, as we all learned in our English junior high school.
Or the main guy, for those of you who forgot. Yeah, the main person.
Yeah, so that's the same story can be told in two different ways. Like one can be, yes, there's a definite bad guy, just because we don't get to see into his head. But the other, I mean, there's tragic heroes who is supposedly the good guy who makes a horrible decision. And does something maybe evil. And
they have a character flaw that they just are unable to overcome.
And, what's the difference between the tragic hero and the villain? I think it's just which one we focus on, basically.
Well, as the thing is, I remember back to the Ravenloft stuff I have read. Yeah, I mean, you can make an argument for Lord Soth from the Dragonlance setting being not exactly as villainous as he may initially seem. Mm-hmm. He's a man flawed by his passions that wound up getting smacked by the gods pretty hard. He loves. Unfortunately, he loves beyond the boundaries of what his honorable knight's code would allow. He winds up having an affair or two. Now, that's not uncommon. I mean, affairs happen. I mean, there's a website out there, Ashley Madison, I heard about, that focuses, it's life is short, have an affair. That's horrible.
In Ravenloft?
In real life.
Oh, in real life.
That's real life sort of thing. It's basically saying, life is short, have an affair. And that's their tagline. I remember apparently there's some work going on there, and there's lawsuits going back and forth between previous employees who made fake profiles or whatever. But
oh, yeah. Well,
that's a topic for another day. But, yeah, that's how I learned about this. And it's I remember hearing that, that's the worst thing I think I've heard on the Internet that doesn't involve, beheadings or something. That's horrible. That is. Okay. I
wouldn't put it up at the top of the list, but I suppose it's a moral bad. Sure.
But it's a moral bad that happens with enough frequency. You can have a dating website based off it effectively. And so Lord Soth wound up, ruining a lot of lives. That way he had the chance to redeem himself by warning, the king priest of Ishtar about an impending, cataclysm, and he wound up turning back to try and make things right with his lover. And oops, giant meteorite falls from the sky, world is permanently changed, he's doomed to an unlife.
Why did he have to choose true love, that jerk?
Why did the gods not send a backup person to warn about this sort of thing happening? Why did it all rest on his shoulders? That was pretty unfair, I think. No, maybe he's a very good guy with very big, virtues, and so the gods said, well, your virtues are this great, so shall be the demands upon you. But I would not, in any good conscience, put all the weight on any one person's shoulders. That's just a design flaw for reality.
Well, do you think they had a choice with that?
Well, they're the gods. They're the ones that dropped the mountain on the king priest when he started being way too bad.
I do wonder though, if there's not, because you talked about how the lords of the domains are sort of tied in ways. They're tied up and
they can't leave their domain physically. They are stuck there.
And I wondered if maybe possibly the gods are tied in some kind of conflict also, and that they're just we're sending this rock, and just our internal politics just won't let it be any other way.
Well, they did have to do something because the balance of good and evil in the camp, the Dragonlance setting was being very offside. He was wiping things out completely. He was getting ready to kill all the dwarves because they weren't good enough. They were technically neutral. Mm-hmm. And so he's I'm not having no Switzerland land kind of around here with these dang dwarves. We're going to slaughter them all. Yeah. Make it so there's only good, and that really disturbs their balance. And it's well, we got to do something to stop this. So mountain, just put it right down there. I suppose I could have gone about things differently, but c'est la vie, that's how they went. But I would not have personally put it on one person's shoulders, and he wound up, being cursed on life. Yeah. So you can make a thing that he's a flawed character. He cannot overcome his desire to have someone to truly love, as opposed to the political marriage sort of thing, or the love that has waned. And the gods won't let them. That's kind of dickish on their parts, honestly. I mean,
yes, but I see Ravenloft as a world in which the forces are almost forces of nature, like, you know, the cosmic.
Mists, yeah.
It's not. I mean, it's not that the gods are doing whatever thing. It's just that
the gods have no clue what's going on there. Actually, the gods just they lose track of this person. It's like, whoa. What happened to Lord Soth? Hey, this guy went missing. What happened to? Where do these people keep going? The gods don't know.
Yeah. And so if he's got this sort of one chance, this one heroic chance to be a hero or choose true love instead, or something like,
to do the right thing for once.
Well,
or the thing he's supposed to do by virtue of his obligations that he has actually agreed to when he kind of signed on to the organization.
I suppose in a way he's responsible, which makes him sort of that tragic figure that, you know, self-inflicted doom, or whatever.
Self-inflicted plus a lot of AoE damage around everyone else around him. I mean, the cataclysm was really nasty.
But it's like, something bad happened to him, and then, it just happens because bad things happen to people.
And that's kind of what the myths are about, is some sort of weird, twisted karma.
Yeah.
But, well, I mean, they also wind up, rewarding evil with their own domains and greater level of ability. But that's something else that no one's ever been able to truly figure out what the heck's going on with them. The myths are weird.
Yes. But, okay. No, actually, Ravenloft is kind of growing on me as we're talking.
Yeah. But the thing is with stuff like that is you can read the stuff about Strahd von Votzarovich, the guy who started the Ravenloft stuff. He could not. I mean, he went to war. He drove out the invaders from his homeland. He spent decades doing this. And when he was finally done, the one lady he wound up loving said he was too old a person. She could not love someone so old as him. And she loved his younger brother, though. And so he wound up slaughtering everyone at the wedding ceremony, sort of thing. And she wound up diving herself off the side of the castle to her untimely demise. And he makes pacts to try not dying, just try and get her back. So he's always in this torture thing. Could you see him as like a flawed character, or is he a person that has gone so far over the limit? Like, dude, that was a wedding ceremony. That was not cool. Not cool to slaughter everyone, buddy. I don't care how much more power you got than them. Not cool.
Well, it does remind me of Game of Thrones, and I think I learned this. Well, I learned this lesson from time to time, but in Game of Thrones, because that particular series shifts perspective from character to character. Like, first it's all about Ned Stark and, you know, the family of the North and like their problems, and you think they're this noble heroic family, but don't forget almost the first scene, or very early on, the first time you see Ned, he's chopping a guy's head off.
It happens.
So, and then like later on, you get introduced to sort of the perspective of the Lannisters and the patriarch, Tywin Lannister, who's he's a fairly old guy, and he's the father of the Kingslayer, and he's father of the dwarf Tyrion, and
the half-man.
Yeah. And sort of Tywin has his own sort of... He's definitely the bad guy. Or I still think of him as the bad guy. But he does, he orders, a whole to get all slaughtered. And, oops. Spoiler.
I'm pretty sure it was given. I mean, the amount of stuff going on about, the online. You have to expect... Plus, I mean, this is George R.R. Martin. Someone dies. That's not a spoiler alert. That is a statistical inevitability with him.
Well, I won't say any more, so if you just don't think about that. If you haven't read that far.
Well, here's the thing. Did the King Lannister himself do it personally with his own weapon?
Well, no, he ordered it.
Well, there's the difference. Strahd was there himself at ground zero, just stabbing people and slaughtering things because he could not get his way.
Well, I think
after 20 years of protecting the land, he was denied any real reward besides the castle his family had always had, which is not really a reward, it's just keeping what you got. And so he goes over the, the internet terms it, the moral event horizon.
Well, the people he's killing, though, they're not angels, right?
No.
And I'm thinking like in the characters of Game of Thrones. It's funny because their sort of conception of honor is often that it would be more honorable to be the person wielding the sword. Like if Tywin had the chance, he would have stabbed the guy himself. Like he would have done all that dirty work himself if he could, because of course that's more honorable.
Could do it and could get away with it. He seems like the kind of guy to make sure he has the alibi so that his hands stay clean. So you're saying Game of Thrones would work very well in a Ravenloft thing, where people wind up actually having like karmic comeuppance, or does it work best in the its own setting where you can do these evil things and at least for a time get away with it until the Game of Thrones catches up with you? That's just how the Game of Thrones work. It's not karma, it's Game of Thrones.
I'm not sure what are you proposing? Proposing
would work taking bits and pieces from like the Game of Thrones series and having its own like pocket islands and clusters on their own?
Oh, I see what you mean. You sort of create a domain because that's
a cluster, a couple domains for a couple evil guys that wind up. Oh yeah, and then he boiled in acid off scene. But no, he actually got secreted away to Ravenloft. Would that work?
You know what? I couldn't say because the thing about Game of Thrones is I'm on book 2 and
book 2, but which season? Right now you can go 2 different ways based on season or book. So
I haven't watched the new season because I don't have HBO.
Oh yeah.
And I think that there's, well, I might be wrong, but I'm expecting some kind of sort of conclusion and sort of a re-establishment of some kind of world order. It might not happen until like he might not even have.
People are going to die off in great enough numbers. There's not going to be anybody else to fight. You will have your world order. In fact, there's only one person left. That's it.
So I sort of expect things to sort of settle into something, and I don't know what that's going to look like. So I don't know how that would, because I would imagine that a period of turmoil is hard to convert into sort of an eternal realm of darkness that sort of mirrors it or sort of echoes it, unless that realm is an eternally changing realm.
Well, they do have one realm where it's based in the Oriental style. It's called like the 6 Shining Isles, but there's only 4 islands left, and it's 6 brothers fighting for dominance over who has the right to rule the islands. And whenever one of them dies through subterfuge or open warfare, their entire island and everyone on it sinks. And so it's an interesting fight that way. So you do have something equivalent to that in its own little bit.
Okay, yeah. Because Game of Thrones is very like sort of rise and fall. Like different kings rise and fall, and and then they get killed, and then they so there's this change.
Or would it be effectively too changing then for Ravenloft because it's effectively started stagnating and they can't handle that sort of quick pace of rise and fall?
I would think maybe what Ravenloft could have is it could have something from the era of the dragons, like
there are very few dragons in Ravenloft.
Because in Game of Thrones there's this backstory of the dragon conquerors who conquered the whole continent and united this 6 or 7 kingdoms. I can't remember how many kingdoms they united. They united them all and into one sort of giant empire, and that sort of was a stable, something like as stable as you can get. So that I imagine you take the flavor of that, of the ruling dragon kings, and you could do something like that in a domain of Ravenloft. I think it'd be weird, but sure, why not?
Ravenloft does have a nice ability to make weird work in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
But yeah, so maybe it wouldn't work for the Game of Thrones because there is no good person. There's just a whole bunch of like sooty evil everywhere. There's not anything that really stands out as being, whoa, that guy's evil, as opposed to everyone's just kind of dickishly evil. And there's good and there's sort of some good in every character and some evil in every character in Game of Thrones. So nobody's evil enough to say, wow, this guy deserves to get popped out of reality into his own little sub-existence.
I don't know. It's sort of, there are definitely the Game of Thrones definitely has people who do horrendous things.
But nothing that really stands out like above and beyond the pale of everything else. It's like, whoa, this guy's evil. But compared to that guy, this guy's like saintly, man. This is nothing compared to that guy. That guy's, whoa, oof. Don't even want to look at him. He's just...
I think like Joffrey did some horrible things. And the Hound's big brother was a pretty awful guy too. So maybe one of, like, I think his name is Gregor Clegane.
Greg.
Yeah.
Take some of the wind out of his sails. Just call him Greg.
He's called the Mountain in Game of Thrones. He's a pretty awful guy, and he, like, held his brother's face in a, like, brazier of fire.
Oof,
so
that's pretty nasty.
Yeah. So that guy, and I think everybody knows Joffrey and has various degrees of loathing for him. So, although, like, Joffrey's so young, let me ask you this.
Okay.
Is there a child king in any of the domains of Ravenloft?
They have a horrific version of Pinocchio. Does that count?
I don't.
Malocchio.
Malocchio?
Yes,
really?
he doesn't have marionettes. He has carionettes, sort of thing. You know, they have he keeps this Geppetto guy like locked up in an attic, making more minions for him. He's killed all the adults in the town, and there's only kids left to play with him.
Okay.
It's pretty creepy.
Well, that's awesome, but yeah, I think that's not quite what I'm looking
Well,
for.
I'm just thinking Pinocchio's being like the eternal kid sort of thing going on. So other than that, I remember Duke Gundark had a kid who was pretty darn evil. He had people shrunk down to like to a small size, and he ran them through like mazes and death traps he had built up for like mice-sized stuff. That was pretty nasty.
Yeah.
But other than that sort of thing, they do focus more on the adult end of stuff. So I suppose you could have like a very malevolent kid of his own whims and designs being pretty darn nice change of pace.
Yeah. Although, well, now thinking about Joffrey in particular, his vices seem rather adult. In fact, it almost seems like Joffrey is intentionally trying to dabble in adult vices.
Sins and vices to make himself more mature.
He doesn't seem like he's playing games, except I think he hunts. So.
Well, there's an interesting one for you there, is that you could wind up having a domain where the person really wants to be in control, but he's cursed to be in the body of an eternal youth, and thus never taken fully seriously because he's just a kid.
Yeah.
And I mean, everyone can wind up ignoring the fact that he never ages because, I mean, they've got... like Schloss Mordenheim, the guy's been in his, he's basically like Victor von Frankenstein XP is what he is.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been in his 30s for 70 years now. He should be over 100. But no one in the domain really seems to catch on to that. They just gloss over that fact. It slides off their minds.
Well, appearance is one thing, and I'd imagine that, you know, in a magical world, there could be just somebody who got a hold of a spell that makes you look like a kid, or maybe got cursed to look like a kid forever.
That would be his thing. He lives forever, but he never looks older than, say, 10 years old. So no one ever takes him really seriously. Well, I mean, you could make him a vampire in this case.
Yeah.
Vampires don't age, so he could be bitten when he was young. Now he's 100, 200 years old, but no one treats him seriously. Because he looks like he's 10.
Well,
that's the curse in this one.
Is he a ruler or some sort?
He would always try and be the ruler, and he could always have enough know-how to try and almost put himself into the position, but, of course, the dark powers of Ravenloft say, haha, no, you never really get there. You're always struggling for it, and no one will ever take you seriously, even when you are, you know, the ultimate upper hand.
Because, like, the kings and stuff, and, like, you know, the Game of Thrones analogy, they always need sort of a circle of courtiers or allies or courtesans. What is the word?
A power base.
Courtiers, nobles, you know, the aristocracy around them. So I would imagine, like, if someone is sort of a half king, or like always one step from being king, or sort of always one step from the rulership, they would have some kind of circle around. Or maybe
they might, but here's the thing: if they were that young, would they truly be able to be put in a position of king, or would they need a seneschal until they reach the age of proper ascension? And thus, the one eternal youth in this case would never be able to fully trust any of his inner court, for fear that they might try and make themselves seneschal, being the effective king in this case. and then him just being a figurehead. And so he winds up being forced to backstab and betray eternally his closest confidants because he can never truly trust them because it might just be another power play on their part.
Yeah, okay, I'm trying to make that work in my brain, but I'm just, like, the people around him...
you can make him even younger. You can make him say that he always looks like he's 6 years old, sort of thing. Really young, sort of thing. So that... No, of course, you're too young to rule. It shall, I shall rule in your stead, and be the proper advisor when you hit the age of ascension and are able to become the true king.
Yeah, but technically, like, the thing is...
It has happened before, and that someone was a king, but they were too young to rule because they were king since the age of 4. You're not going to have a 4-year-old on the throne in real life. That was an actual concern.
Yeah,
so they had a so-and-so act, as the king until they hit the proper age where they could truly make the adult decision.
Yeah, but
transfer over.
I don't understand this. Where you're saying that the biology matters when age is just something you count. Like, you just count how many years they have gone by. Just count.
And that would be the trick of the dark powers, and that this person is cursed to always look 10 or 6
yeah, but they
years
look
old.
10, but they're not actually 10.
But they will always be treated as though they were, because no one else is able to see past that sort of thing. And no matter how precocious the kid seems, they're always going to think, seems smart for a kid. But I'm in my 40s. This kid's only 6 years old. I'll be able to have him on the throne, but I'll be the real power. And so that way, the kid winds up having to, reach up, I suppose, reach up and backstab.
Except that, like, these people might be somebody that he's known since, like, they were both 6 together, and then the
all the more reason to trust them less.
Sure, but it's also harder for that person to be like, well, to dismiss somebody they've known for 40 years just because they look a little different. That's what I'm saying.
Well, it would be the powers of Ravenloft say they never even have that. It's one of the weird things that the powers
so everybody's enchanted against the person.
Effectively, yes. Well, there's some deep issues in Ravenloft as to how far the mind goes and what's actually real. A person will become a Dark Lord as, like, I've done my evil deed. I run off into the mist to escape the villagers with pitchforks and torches and burning pitchforks for real damage. And, I emerge into my this wonderful land where they call me the ruler. They say it has many hundreds of years of history going on here, but really the domain was created, say, last Tuesday. So, are the people in there real? Is it morally okay just to slaughter anyone because they just came into being last week and thus they have no real history, despite the fact they truly believe their history and all that? So there are some really deep questions as to what constitutes where the powers end and where the individual begins for Ravenloft. It gets weird. Because, well, some of the Dark Lords of the domains came from, the domains when, it's like, oh, this domain formed, and then there were this person, and here he did something evil, he became his own Dark Lord. Wait, wasn't he part of the Mists, or when does he qualify as his own person? So there's some really deep questions that never got answered.
All right, okay.
But in this case, yeah, they do have the power to just have everyone ignore the fact that, I'll take a nice example from the Dark Sun campaign. You've got the Dragon King or the Dragon Queen and the Thakok Ann, the second in command. They seem to switch gender back and forth in weird little ways that never get fully touched upon. And everyone just seems okay, Thakok Ann is a female. She's always been a female. Of course, she's always been female. That's how it goes. You're born female, you live female. It's a pseudo-medieval sort of crazy style life we're in here. And then all of a sudden wakes up one day, Thakok Ann is male. Of course he's a guy. He's always been a guy. And so the powers have the ability to effectively rewrite some of the memories that way.
So how would you remember that it was any different, though?
You wouldn't. Only they would wind up knowing. And that's, in that campaign bit there, that Island of Terror they have, that's one of the weird things in that it might be like a forbidden love sort of thing, what they work with, like the Dragon King versus Thakok Ann, loving him, but Thakok Ann was also a man, so that the love was completely forbidden for what he was experiencing, and then sometimes female, and it works. And then, so not a Dragon King, it's a Dragon Queen, and so it winds up being an eternal torture for them, despite the fact the populace never really, gives a darn about, what gender it is, because it's always been that way, according to them. They've always been gender X here, sort of thing.
Okay, well,
it gets weird in that case.
That's a fun thought, I suppose, but I'm just wondering, like, where, like, how do you look at that? How do you approach that as, again, I guess, you know, bringing it down to the level of adventuring characters? Do the adventurers just like why even have that in the mythology if the players never find out?
It's one of the weird things to mess with the players' heads, not the characters. That helps get them thinking in weird ways.
Okay, so you tell your players around the table, oh yeah, Queen what's her face did this and that, and then the next week
King.
it's King, and they're like, I caught you, you screwed up, and then the DM is like, yeah.
No, it's always been a guy. I don't know what you're talking about. And then you switch it again next week. No, it's always been a she. I mean, just look at the history records here. It's always been she.
Well, I don't like that particular tactic.
It's a weird little thing that they do. They do more subtle things. If you go to the realm of Darkon in the northern part of the core domain, anyone who winds up living there winds up finding they've got family roots there. If you spend more than a month there, it's an actual game rule that you find out you've got family there. Mm-hmm. Everyone who goes there finds out they belong there. It's kind of weird that way. Game effects, like do you really want to stay because now you found out you've got cousins over here? Doesn't matter.
Okay. So I think I'm figuring out a little bit more about what sort of Ravenloft represents, in that it's more of a breaking the third wall type of story, because it
breaks all four walls, sometimes the ceiling.
Wait, breaking which number wall did I say? The fourth?
You said third, but it breaks walls 1 through 4, sometimes the roof, and occasionally it shatters itself into the basement. It goes weird sometimes, but fun.
Yeah, and so I suppose that's, I don't know, that makes it feel like, it ought to be more whimsical if that happens. But I suppose,
and that's the thing is in another sort of domain, it would be whimsical and happy, but in this case it gets a weird, eerie sense. Like, the difference between looking at your house with the lights on versus the lights off. Have you ever wandered around your apartment with all the lights off?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very different place than with the lights on, isn't it?
Okay.
And so that's the thing is, yes, this might seem like a nice little piece of art to hang up on the wall until, the lights are off and all you see is a little bit of glim reflection from outside, and all of a sudden, wow, I had no idea. That picture looked so freaking creepy when it's just a bunch of dark silhouettes on the wall.
So I would
like
say
it anymore.
One of the things that you ought to do then, if you're going for that Ravenloft feel, is you want to personalize it to the actual players at the table, which is, I think,
very much, yes.
I think this is also why it's hard to continue a published series, because you can't make it personal to everybody. Although if you could, that'd be awesome.
Well, Ravenloft has always been about personalization. I mean, that's why every evil person gets his own personalized prison cell of a domain.
Yeah, so you want to, if players mention something sort of offhand, sort of about real life, you want to somehow work that into the game and make that happen and make that a thing. Sort of like, so make the real world intrude on the game world. And if
blur the line just a little bit.
If the doorbell rings for pizza, it's a dreaded messenger, winged messenger from somewhere.
We'll say Darkon in this case.
Yeah.
The evil witch lord Aslan has a lot of powers, although he never has what he truly wants. Being the sorcerer king, or I suppose wizard king in this case, he is cursed in that he will never be able to learn another new spell. No matter how powerful, he's a lich. This guy should be able to have fathomable magical powers. He's stuck with the spells he had when he came in. He gets no more. That's it. And that drives him nuts, because he's all about the spell learning and he loves the magic.
Yeah, and it's sort of, it's that whole level that messes with players, or messes with the people who are trying to metagame and trying to learn all the spells or trying to tick all the boxes. Well, you say, well, no, you can't tick all the boxes. Or,
Or, the person I want to get, all the fun weapons I possibly can, and they wind up doing some dark things. They wind up getting a curse from the dark powers. Any weapon in their hands winds up rusting and disintegrating over the course of a week. They can never keep the weapon. It always degrades on them. What they want the most, they get none of that. Well, if they're evil, if they're good people, and they can maintain their proper virtues and be very good about it,
I see.
They're immune. Yeah. There are people that can effectively just walk away from Ravenloft. It has no hold over them. They are too pure a being. That's kind of groovy.
Yeah, well...
Although angels still
okay.
get stuck in there, as it turns out. So, well, just their planner nature about being, I'm so good, it causes reality wrinkles.
Yeah,
So.
well, yeah, reality wrinkles, another word for DM fudging.
No, in this case, there's actually rules about that. If you are being composed of like an outsider, it becomes a core part of your alignment nature. Like, if you become a 20th level monk in Ravenloft, and you become the outsider with, the good or evil alignment type based on what your alignment is, you gain reality wrinkles off that. You have become so purified, so grand. Your basic fundamental nature interferes weirdly with the Ravenloft harmonic vibrations, or whatever you want to call it.
In other words, giving the DM license to mess with you.
The DM always has license to mess with you. That's like core. Well, that's like one of the first lines in the DMG for all the editions.
This is what I was asking at the beginning. Like, why? I mean, I love Ravenloft. Like, I love the flavor, the gothic flavor of it. But why the whole meta, like the mists mess with you, when you don't need that? The DM can do that anyways.
It's more of a free reign and making sure it's an artistic license.
Okay.
I could run a campaign for you. You roll up a nice little dwarven fighter, and then I'm going to say the title of this campaign is How Long Before an Anvil Falls on the Dwarf. And then it's just you're set up in a circumstance where, things falling on top of you. Ooh, I can mess with you that way.
Yeah.
But that's kind of crude, kind of like an Acme sort of style of pain and torture. Whereas with Ravenloft, it's more of an artistic flair. In this case, it'd be, you become a victim of your own petard. You're the dwarven warrior who going for the gold. In which case, if you do horrible things like slaughter an entire goblin village to get their gold, you wind up paying for it in ways other than the money you get. What you truly want, you never get. So you have like a rusting or an anti-Midas touch. Any money you touch becomes base metal and worthless. Slag metal, maybe, something like that. You can't even wind up turning your gold piece that turned into iron into something artistic and wonderful that dwarves do, like bracelets. No, it becomes slag metal. You never get anything of value. And your weapon happens that way too, by the way. You got bad weapons now. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So that's, again, the personal tailorization of it. Anyone could just, deal out damage until the players die. You can mess with them that way, but to take the character's flaws and turn that back upon them, that's what Ravenloft is more about. But,
taking the player's flaw in some way. I suppose it's the characters. Although, it's... so what about this, I guess you're not really punishing the players. The thing is they're role-playing, and they're like, okay, I'm a greedy dwarf, and my dwarf is not particularly ethical. He doesn't really care if he kills goblins, even if they might not necessarily be evil.
They weren't actually out there raiding the countryside. They were just, growing mushrooms, whatever it is goblins eat most of the time when they're not raiding human farms.
So I'm just going to play my dwarf according to how I think he would progress, and then the DM. So this is the
Next
story.
Next thing you know, he's got a spiked helm going on. There's 2 goblin skulls, one on each horn up there. Ha ha ha. And
then
that's when the mists start showing up.
Yeah, the DM is like, well, no, I have to teach this dwarf a lesson, and
your actions are far beyond both alignment and what I consider to be, even traditionally allowable for a campaign.
Yeah.
Like as I said, you got goblin skulls on your horns. You have desecrated your foe and are wearing them as ornaments now. That's pretty harsh. Do you want to walk down into the mist-shrouded vale below? Hint, hint.
So then what? The player just is like, okay, well, that was a fun character. Now I'll try a different one.
Sometimes all you need to do in other campaigns is just have, highlight that there are mists, around, the goblin town is done, dusk starts up and the mists rise up as the evening begins to cool, and it's like, ooh, mists, that's right, don't be too bad, buddy, I gotta make sure to curb my excess. Or what you could even do is ignore the dwarven part about that, just be like a human fighter. I am an XP hog. I kill things for the experience points. I'm that metagame for. My guy doesn't even have a name, and so he winds up just I'll kill that person there. That's all 15 experience points here, and I get this here, and I fight, and that's all. Why are you fighting? I'm fighting for experience. I just want to slaughter to get better and stronger. And then, if it's a Ravenloft sort of thing, it winds up being that they get dark powers, checks, and failures until they actually become an ogre. A large, brutish, killing ogre with no greater plan than to destroy.
Awesome.
It's a thing. And so, yeah, what they are on the inside effectively becomes what they are on the outside.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is what I don't understand.
It's not something you would normally see in a campaign outside of Ravenloft unless someone casts like a powerful curse spell on them, like, you slaughtered my, goblinoid family of 300. But I'm a goblin mage. Curses! And now you're an ogre. You might see that from time to time in there, but with Ravenloft, you don't need that sort of thing. Well, they actually have rules for people like dying curse, like, how dare you burn me at the stake for this? I will show you all revenge in the next life. And then you actually throw out a curse. Okay, yeah, turns out the curse sticks. You're dead, but you know what? We're going to have you come in as another character and see what happens to the people who burned you at the stake, Mr. Wizard. Okay,
yeah. But it seems like the DM is sort of, I don't know, be acting like karma is one thing, but the other thing is like, I'm steering you to, I'm trying to direct your behavior some. I guess that's the sinister nature.
You can make an argument. That's what the Mists of Ravenloft do.
No, but
they show them what you want the most. Oh, you want the gold, Mr. Dwarf? You want it? But all you have to do is slaughter a goblin town for it.
This is what I don't understand, though, is that, Ravenloft is, on the one hand, it seems to reward the evil,
it
evil
both rewards and punishes.
Okay.
It's almost like some sort of alien entity is learning morality through the worst examples.
It's almost as if some players had extra reality control over the characters.
It's like this. I'm going to give you temptation. I want to see how far you're going to keep going for this temptation.
Yeah.
How far down the rabbit hole are you going to go? Are you going to stop your excess, or are we going to just keep going worse and worse? And for each step you go, I'm going to make it harder for you. You're going to, be tortured, inflicted. Are you going to keep going through this, even through the negative punishment?
Well, is it harder to be evil or be good in Ravenloft?
Well, you can make an argument that being good in Ravenloft is going to cost you one way or another.
Yeah, and being evil in Ravenloft is going to cost you one way or another.
And you make an argument that's actually not too far off from life. You get punished for being evil, and you wind up losing out on some stuff if you're too good. What if Ravenloft is actually about trying to find your karmic center? It's not about being so good. It's not about being so evil. It's just about being one with everything and not making these waves in reality.
Maybe.
Whoa.
It seems like, it's sort of designed to detach the player from thinking being the character. Detach the player from the character in that, in a lot of ways you don't have control over what ultimately happens.
Well,
so
all you have to do is say, no. My dwarf realizes, that he has transgressed wrong. He is not liking what he is becoming. He forswears off of ever killing another goblin unless it's in self-defense. And he just walks away from goblin fighting. And then the mists have no hold on him. He's resisted the temptation. He's learned his lesson. And he walks away.
And he walks away from Ravenloft.
Well, not from Ravenloft as a whole, but from the temptation they were leading him on. He's no longer that fun to play with or something like that, I suppose you can see it as. And he just walks away. Whatever taint he has sticks around, but he no longer accumulates his horrible dark powers and becomes this creature of myth and legend and power.
I like the thought that sort of the good characters of Ravenloft never really take root. They pass over top of it and beyond it, and if you start giving into evil, it's now I'll take this and take that, and you become attached to sort of an area. You become rooted. It
is
involved.
A lot like that, I think, for style.
And to be truly good, it's sort of no, you just have to just
rise above.
No.
Keep just one step away.
That's
one step ahead, but that's another factor.
Yeah.
So but it's very much a villain-based thing. But it's about the villains who make themselves. It's not just we're a bunch of evil people because we're evil. It's well, here's my story. This is how I've become this way. Here are the stairs I used to go down to this deep pit of evil I'm now in. One step at a time. And so I suppose from the one hand, every villain in there is just a flawed protagonist, a hero that was unable to overcome their character foils and shortcomings.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't know if we actually came to any conclusion, but we have been going on for a while, and we didn't really cover our main topic, I don't think.
No, we kind of got off on one heck of a nice tangent there. But, okay, well, here's this. In this case, so what we've shown is that you can have such a flawed protagonist. In this case, do you really need an antagonist besides the powers that be and karma itself?
Well, technically, no. You can, like, there's... Did I mention the three archetypal, like...
Man versus nature, man versus stories. Man, and man versus self?
Yeah, those. Or I suppose human being versus, if you
want to be
gender neutral.
The gender neutral term.
Okay, yeah. So you don't... You could get along just fine with telling the man versus nature story, or the man versus himself story. So you don't need an antagonist, or a...
They are their own
character as an antagonist, yeah.
And yet, why is it such a? Why was that? That I was disappointed that there was no pure antagonist character in. It came from outer space.
Well, this is what I'm saying to you. I guess I'll sort of reiterate what I said before. This is what I'm saying about those conflicting interests. They're not It's not moral good versus moral evil. It's like this guy wants this thing, and sort of he's opposing someone who wants something slightly different.
Or the same thing and only one person can have it.
Or they're not communicating and they don't realize that they actually want the same thing.
And that's the thing, a lot of what was going on probably could have been solved by, the alien just, saying to people, hey, I know I'm freaky to you. Our spaceship crashed. We need some help getting out. Please don't make a fuss. We'll just be on our way if you can help us out a little bit here.
Yeah, and maybe it's just a failure of the model, a failure of thinking, because maybe all stories are just somebody wants something.
Well, in this case, maybe you can look at it from the meta scene, because It Came From Outer Space was written by Ray Bradbury, the classic sci-fi author.
Yeah.
And maybe, in this case, it's showing his desire to not have, any antagonistic alien species. It's just his desire to say, I really hope if or when we ever get out to outer space, there's no enemies for us to fight. There's no, bug aliens that are always going to be on all the planets we're going to have to eradicate from. I really hope it's just, we're able to contact them in some way that's peaceful and and doesn't require shooting lasers and big space battles. Maybe that's his desires speaking out that way.
It could be, but it's also I think in some ways it's more tragic and more horrible if the aliens actually do have sort of good intentions and yet still conflict happens. Because I think that's more tragic when it's a good guy versus another good guy, and yet still horrible things happen. Or just, human versus, alien with sort of human-like intentions, not necessarily,
In which case it's just, human in monster suit versus human sort of thing.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So it's...
they may look alien, but the mind inside is something we can relate with.
And sort of that, in one sense, that's optimistic and positive, because it's yes, we can understand them and maybe reason with them, or maybe there's some path towards some resolution. On the other hand, it is tragic because it's recognizing the fact that the same conflicts that we've been having as humans
and cannot seem to overcome.
Nation versus nation, that we keep on reliving generation after generation are going to happen in space too.
And it's not just us. We can't go out there, contact and say, oh, that was our problem. Wow, that is an easy fix. We'll relay that back to the home planet, and we're going to polish that place up. Come back in 40 years, you are going to love the place. No, it's not going to have any magic bullet answers, eh?
And that's the pessimistic view, but it's also the good story view, because there's always going to be conflicts to tell stories about, and that's the story of humanity, of how we fight each other, and sometimes bad things happen, sometimes it's not so bad.
But what does it say about me that I would have liked the story more if the aliens had been kidnapping people to use them as some sort of bioenergy cell for them to power their spaceship. Like in the crash, their other energy cells were disrupted, and so where can they get this from? And it's kind of like what you see in the Matrix. It's like, oh, the human body can actually make quite an efficient battery in this case. And so they wind up kidnapping people to use them as a power source.
I think the only thing that says about you, I think, is that you prefer that clear-cut answer in that...
When it comes to aliens, at least.
Is that they have a problem and they have a potential solution, and if there's a conflict, there's a reason for the conflict, rather than sort of this nebulous story, which is uncomfortable for everybody, of we're having a conflict but we're not really sure why, like we're not sure why we're mad.
Why don't we all just sit down? I know you guys don't like us, so we can put like a curtain up between us sort of thing, but we can all sit down and talk this out. Don't bring this up with the government, by the way. We're not planning on being around here longer than a week, and we really don't want to be autopsied, so let's just see if you guys can help us out. We'll put in a good word to the galactic community, even though we're not supposed to contact you at all. And, thumbs up.
Yeah, and the nice thing about sort of aliens as body snatchers is you don't necessarily have to parlay with them. If it's clear that you can't handle what they're doing, then there's no need to talk to them. You just go in guns blazing.
Or what if it's such a fact that the alien is so alien you cannot even contact them? When they try and speak to you, it would shatter your mind. You're hearing things that nothing on Earth has been anywhere close to replicating and coming up with. Their language is like that of madness to us because it's just so different.
Yeah, and that, in some ways, that frees you to be like, okay, well, in that case, there's only one course of action, is destruction or evasion or,
mutual separation. We just don't go near them.
You have to solve the problem in a very sudden way, rather than trying to engage with the madness, which you don't want to do.
What if we throw some insane people within their radius of speaking? Do they come back out sane? Can we use this to our advantage? No, that's an abuse of people that have little power, and that warrants a dark powers check, Ryan. Next thing you know, I'm a dark lord throwing insane people at all sorts of stuff. Oh.
So I want to take a moment to remind the listeners that we have an email address that they can email us at, thesimulationist@gmail.com. Send us all of your crazy, weird, mad thoughts. We'd be happy to engage them. We are definitely not going to go in guns blazing. Or maybe we will.
I honestly can't afford enough bullets to go in guns blazing. If I have a gun, I'm going in gun ready, but not blazing. I mean, bullets ain't cheap. Well, okay, they are kind of cheap, but I'm really cheap, so that makes them kind of expensive. So
they're not free anyway. The bullets don't grow on trees.
This isn't Bullet Land where they grow on trees.
Yeah, this is Canada where I think
maple comes out of the trees, not bullets.
Yeah.
It's not Detroit.
So what else? Also, anywhere you find this podcast, whether it's on YouTube or Stitcher or iTunes, there's always going to be a little box where you can write reviews or comments. So we welcome all of those. There's a box on the blog page where you can, I check all of them. I also check Twitter. If you tweet at me, I am at Spaceboot1 on Twitter, and we are also on Facebook. And Ryan's a little more active on. Ryan does more Facebook. I do more Twitter, I think.
We spread out to cover the bases, sort of thing.
And we're always looking for more interaction with people. So,
Facebook, if you know some good third, edition, party stuff for Ravenloft, where someone's come up with stuff and just put it out for the world to know. I'd love to see that. I'd love to read it.
Yeah. Well, we're aware of some of the fan sites, of course.
Well, the Carcantine is still at least baseline active. They do have a nice little wiki for those who want to read learn a little bit more. It's not all revealed sort of stuff, but they do have some interesting things about stuff that was going to be potential canon that never got a chance to make it in. And so you can get a chance to see behind the veil sort of thing as to what was going to be but never got a chance to. And that's always kind of fun.
Cool. Okay, so I think that's all the social medias that we're on. Type us into the Google.
Google, Bing, and the various derivatives. I think Yahoo is technically Bing with an extra cover on it, but whatever.
Let's see. Also, if you enjoyed this show, please use your word of mouth, because that's how we would like to get more people listening to us.
If you are an alien, it doesn't necessarily it could be the word of thought madness. It works either way. We'll accept it.
Send us to your friends telepathically. Yeah. So what was your final answer on whether you need to have that human antagonist? Right?
Well, I'm thinking about it, and from what all I've said is maybe it's a lot easier just to hook up and say, okay, good guy, bad guy, fight, have a good couple scenes and see who wins sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas no one's really the bad guy, but there is conflict going on. It's much more subtle story, so you have to be more involved. And maybe I was just being lazy this week watching It Came from Outer Space. Maybe I just wanted a simple sci-fi horror where monster, aliens from beyond the stars are doing weird, horrible things to humanity.
You say lazy, I say mentally efficient. Looking for the shortest path, which is what we are excellent at doing as human beings.
Yeah, but on the other hand, a more subtle story I think is always more rewarding. So maybe I was just being lazy. I just wanted a simple escapist story about something happening with humans in 1950s America.
Yeah, but I will say, also about when you do set up a story, as in good guy, bad guy, and say you're a story writer and you're brainstorming a story, you're like, okay, I'm going to make the good guys do this and the bad guys do that. You might start off telling that story with the bad guys as total evil, as definitely man versus other man plotline, but it might morph into something that's more maybe they're not as evil as I first thought when I thought up the story. It
blurs. The good guy's a little dark, whereas the bad guy has noble intentions.
So a story I'm imagining that It Came from Outer Space probably did start out as a story. Okay, I'm gonna do, here's my good guy and here's the bad guy, and but then it sort of morphed into, I got to flesh out my bad guy a little more, make him scarier, make him, and then it turns out, maybe they're not so bad, and ultimately, maybe they're not bad at all. They're just stuck on a planet where they're not supposed to be, and it twists it around. And
only Ray Bradbury knows for complete certainty, or knew. Is he still around? No.
I think he died last year.
Then the answer will never be solved.
The answer is whatever you want it to be. Whatever the reader
unless they find something that definitively says otherwise in his
diary.
Had a hard time coming up with monstrous aliens. Decide to make them a decent, intelligent, sort of reasonable kind of guy. The story's not quite so good, but I'm still getting a paycheck for it, so that's how I'm writing it. Thank you, Thursday. This is my diary entry.
Well, as I always...
I imagine Ray Bradbury would actually write better than that, but
I don't know. I read Fahrenheit 451, so...
I imagine he writes better than that in his diary, at least, But...
I don't know, but sort of, the author is dead is not just when the author is literally dead, it's also the thought that... no matter what they actually write, as my actual intent was that this was the truth. I think it's always open to whatever the reader sort of feels is the better story. Not necessarily better story, but whatever the reader feels happened, or in fact, there is no real story. It's just a multitude of competing, what if this and what if that? Okay, so maybe that's getting a little off
deep
track. Did you have any more to say?
No, I think I've covered that for my own self-diagnosis.
More on antagonists and all right.
In the end, I suppose the better story is always the more subtle one, though. Because, it gauges and draws in a little bit more than just oh, yes, this was clearly good guy, bad guy, and then one side won, the end. So... I guess you can take a look at it that way. If you think your story that you're writing isn't complex enough and you just say, this looks a little crude, make it subtle. Deviate around, mess it up, muddle the waters a bit. See if that's better.
Yeah, gray the motivations of the antagonist a little bit.
Or at least make them relatable.
Yeah. In fact, and then that doesn't... that's not even that hard, because all you have to do is sort of spend a little more time focusing on them, and you see that they're also a character and they have things that motivate them too. So okay. Yeah.
Take care out there.
Okay. I've been Josh Trelevin.
I've been Ryan Kirkby.
Click over to if you're listening in the future, there's another one next week. Yeah. If you're listening to this in the present, we will see you. We won't see you. You will hear our voices again. We hope to see your written communications in the next. In the interim, and in the future to come.
Between iterations. Inter-iterational.
And what else happens at the end? Oh, send money.